Aston Martin made enemies in Formula 1 during its final year as Racing Point in 2020, and the new era has started with contention as well. The team owned by Lawrence Stroll has had a difficult beginning to 2021, and the blame has been squarely pointed at aerodynamic rule changes introduced over the winter. Aston Martin's frustrations even triggered a request for help from the FIA to do something to restore the competitiveness of itself and Mercedes, and even prompt suggestions Aston could somehow sue the governing body if that wasn't forthcoming. If you're hearing this and doing your best confused Nick Young impression, you're not alone. Even Red Bull team boss Christian Horner said he couldn't understand it and labelled the call a bit naive. But don't worry, we're here to explain the story of this rules row and some of the tensions behind it. All you need to do is watch, and if you'd be so kind, like and subscribe as well. As Racing Point, the Silverstone-based team won the 2020 Sakir Grand Prix last December and narrowly missed out on finishing third in the Constructors' Championship. But Aston Martin started the 2021 season at the tail end of the midfield group it spent most of last year at the front of. Aston believes it's predominantly the result of a quartet of rule changes taking performance away from the rear of the car. Those changes, which include cutting away part of the floor and shortening diffuser strakes, are believed to have hurt the low-rake Mercedes and Aston Martin cars more than any other. Aston Martin team principal Otmar Szafnauer said at the season opening Bahrain Grand Prix, where the team scored just 1 point for Lance Stroll's 10th place finish, that those cars had lost a second relative to their higher rake rivals. So the team sought to discuss the issue with the FIA at Imola, to question the process behind the rule changes and ask what can be done to help the teams that have been hurt most by them. It was a surprise to many that Szafnauer was even asked whether legal action would be possible if Aston didn't get the answer it wanted, and it was an even bigger surprise that Szafnauer didn't rule it out. Many interpreted all of that as owner Lawrence Stroll reacting badly to the poor start to the season after significant investment across both the F1 team and the Aston Martin Lagonda car company. It's been seen as Stroll wanting to prove a point of some kind, but Szafnauer wouldn't expand on the motivation for the ongoing discussion beyond stating it was just to have a good understanding of the entire process and be happy that the process is equitable. Mercedes boss Toto Wolff said it wouldn't be right to point the finger at anyone, but he did make it clear he supported Aston's desire to question the rules. His close alliance with Stroll and the relationship between the two teams has caused some to point out that Mercedes might just be letting its customer team do some of the finger pointing on its behalf. Wolff said he understood why Aston Martin would feel aggrieved if the rule changes were made to peg back Mercedes, and Aston ended up collateral damage given it's the only other team that shares that low rake concept. He also said one can always question what the motivation was behind the rule changes, and said it was right to review the process. The potential for wrongdoing relates to the changes ostensibly being made on safety grounds. Teams discussed with F1 and the FIA how to cut around 10% of downforce from the rear of the cars. They were being carried over to 2021 amid the COVID-19 pandemic, but the same pandemic was stopping Pirelli being able to develop new tyres. So the 4 floor changes came over a period of several months. Teams unanimously agreed that the downforce should be reduced for 2021, and the process for deciding on the specific ways to achieve that was done by a majority. But after that, Pirelli announced it would be able to make a small change to its tyres for 2021 after all, to increase the integrity and allow the much criticised high starting pressure minimums to be lowered. The suggestion is that all 4 aero changes were therefore not necessary on safety grounds after all, and instead covered up a performance-based agenda. It's suspected that there was a competitive motivation for the changes, given Mercedes has won the last 7 Drivers' and Constructors' Championships, and there were suspicions that the new rules would hurt low-rake cars more. Aston Martin also believes that this process should have just been left entirely to the FIA and had no involvement from F1 itself. But many have pointed out that these concerns generally fall flat, given Aston was part of the entire process last year and gave its blessing to the changes. Pirelli Motorsport Director Mario Isola also says that F1 always planned to tackle concerns about rising downforce levels with a combination of rule changes and a revised tyre. There was just no guarantee Pirelli would be able to sign off on the latter. So Pirelli's argument is that it wasn't possible to rely on tyre changes alone. The second batch of aero changes to the rear brake ducts and diffuser were added in August, but Pirelli wasn't able to track test its revised tyres until October 25th, during Friday practice for the Portuguese Grand Prix. The tyres were subsequently signed off and homologated by necessity long after the 2021 technical regulation changes had been finalised, and nowhere near as quickly as Aston has sometimes made out. Red Bull boss Horner said he was slightly surprised to hear of Szafnauer's suggestion of a rule change to help the lower rake cars, claiming he'd heard rumblings of discontent but nothing as blatant as that. Pointing out that Aston Martin had been involved in the entire process and approved it happening in the first place, Horner said it would seem a little naive to think that the rules are suddenly going to be changed after the process had been fully followed, and he added, "I'm struggling to get my head around that." Few expected Aston's request to be well received by the rulemakers, let alone result in any kind of change this year, whether that was reverting to the 2020 flaws entirely or only undoing a couple of the new rules. And Aston already appears to have backed down slightly after a couple of meetings with the FIA in Italy. Szafnauer said the team was now pretty satisfied the proper process had been followed, but he didn't say what they were now satisfied with compared to before. He also claimed the process wasn't entirely done with, saying that they were still in discussions and still trying to discover what all the steps were to make sure it was done properly and equitably. If this is a case of Stroll trying to exert pressure or prove a point, it's probably best it stops and Aston focuses on improving its 2021 car. Aston Martin's argument about its performance being slashed away by the rules was strong in Bahrain but dented at Imola, where it had very similar performance to last year. In fact, it was one of only 4 teams to actually have a faster theoretical best qualifying time at Imola this year than 2020, a point of comparison we've used just to avoid the potential for the pecking order to be altered by a driver not quite hooking up their lap. And of course, Mercedes has taken a win and a pole with a low-rake car this season, and Lewis Hamilton leads the championship. And there's also the need for Aston Martin to focus on building an all-new car to vastly different technical rules for 2022. So do you think Aston Martin's making excuses and should just focus on the task at hand? Or does it have a point and F1's processes should be scrutinised? Let us know in the comments, and if you enjoyed this video, whether you're on Aston Martin's side or not, leave us a thumbs up and subscribe if you're not already to join us again for future videos.